Awesome. So thank you and welcome to today's session. So I see some old faces, I see some new faces. It's quite exciting. And Veroshka, welcome. Thank you so much for joining in. Mr. Makatu, I'm looking forward to your thoughts. Mashudu as well. So I hope that we have read the book. Mashudu, Feroshka, have you? Okay. I don't have to ask Mr. Makatu. I think Mr. Makatu has read the book. So thank you so much. So the agenda is straightforward. Whoever's book is being reviewed. So if you, for instance, we nominate you to recommend a book, and we review the book that you recommended, the rule is you are the one who's leading the discussion. So you are the one who's facilitated the discussion because this is your book. So for the past 2 months, I think I need to give the reins to someone else. For the past 2 months, I've been the one recommending because I see most of you guys are shy to recommend books. But so I'll facilitate the session. I'll go first. So what usually happens is I will have then 10 minutes to review the book and to share with you my thoughts on the book. And then what you then do is you guys come through with your comments. So then I'll be asking a series of questions, and then you can then come through with your comments and how you found the book. And we at the end, we rate the book. So we then decide out of 10, what rating do we give the book? And then we then motivate, why you rate it that way. So what I'm going to do is basically, we usually have a class at Lora, the last class at Lora, which is titled, on our new venture creation, we have a last class, which is titled, How will you measure your life? So it's a last class after all the, I think Mashudu, you have done the program. I don't know if you still remember the last class, but it's basically, we take the students on a discussion on, you have done the program, you have done the course, you're going out there, you're going to slay dragons, you're going to be the successful person. And one of the things that is going to be quite an important thing for you to be careful of is your ego. Because as you succeed, your ego becomes too big and you might end up, in trouble. So those who have done the program know the material. So I'm just going to go through that because the material that we use is based on the book. And yeah, I think, it's something that we go in detail. We spend almost 2 hours or so discussing this. Ego is the enemy. So what we usually do is we ask the, and you can go through this and ask yourself these questions. How often do we get feedback? How often do we ask people to give us feedback? And how often do we get praise, and how do you know if your ego is too big? And I want to come back to these questions later on. How do you know that your ego is too big? And how do you ensure that your ego is in check, and how do you challenge your ego? Because sometimes people's egos, they develop big heads without really realizing it until something very bad happens. And then they realize that actually their ego was just too big. So we go through that. And of course, there's books and this, How They Blow It, is a book on the result or the after effect of big egos, right? So most of these guys were successful entrepreneurs. They started businesses. They did very well, from your typical Rex to Riches type of stories. And then something wrong happened and they developed big heads and they blew it. And to a large extent, the contributor to how they blow it is their ego. But what Ryan Holiday is talking about here, and I must say that this actually has to be one of my top 5 favorite books. He talks about, how ego shows up, and he's a storyteller. He's got stories for days. And he talks about how ego shows up, right? And he says ego shows up in three ways. It shows up when we're aspiring, when we are succeeding, and when we are failing. So basically, when we are aspiring, instead of working, we start coming up with grand ideas, we share them, we talk. And he's got this whole thing about talking. We talk, and we don't work. And we believe that talking too much or talking a lot is equivalent to working. And he says the two are not the same, right? We believe that because you are talking, you are spending energy talking, that is equivalent to you working, and you are not working. So, and he says that's ego. Instead of keeping quiet, shutting up and working, here you are babbling and talking about the plans and how great your idea is and how revolutionary your idea is going to change the world, and you don't put in the hours. So he says ego raises its head when we talk a lot and don't shut up and work, right? So he says ego shows up there, but it also shows up when we succeed. And when this is typical, when people are succeeding, ego becomes too big, right? We don't listen to anyone. He gives in the book, he gives examples of soccer teams that won the World Cup, and the following tournament they get knocked out in the group stages, because in the 4 years that they are world champions, they are busy celebrating. They've got these big egos, and they believe that everybody should give them respect, and they don't put in the hours, right? So he says ego shows up there as well, but also ego shows itself up when we fail. So what we do when we fail is, instead of admitting or being vulnerable to say, I need help, I'm failing, I'm not, a lot of people, because they've created this perception that they're the be all, the successful guys, then when they fail, they keep quiet, they don't talk until it's too late. It's too late to rescue the situation. So there's quite a lot of people who they don't want to look like they are failures, and as a result, they keep quiet and they don't talk. So he says ego shows itself in these three ways. When we aspire, we talk a lot, we don't keep quiet, and we don't work. When we succeed, when we are the world champs, and we see it in sports quite a lot. And some entrepreneurs who will remind us that they have worked so hard to be where they are, and no one can tell them anything. And then we also see it when people are failing. Instead of asking for help, they keep quiet. So he says that's how ego shows itself up. I love the stories. There's quite a lot of stories in there, but I'm not going to go through all this. And then he says, how do we deal with the ego? There's this concept, Shamrock formula, plus minus equals. So how do you deal with the ego as you're aspiring, as you're succeeding, and as you're failing, right? He says Shamrock theory is when you're aspiring, right? If you're ambitious, you've got great plans, surround yourself with your equals. So surround yourself with your peers, because as your peers are working, you'll also realize that talking a lot is not equivalent to working. So you'll also keep quiet and you'll start working. And then when you are succeeding, surround yourself with people who are ahead of you, right? When you're succeeding, surround yourself with people who are steps ahead of you, because they'll humble you, to say, yes, you are doing well, but you're not there yet. There's quite a lot to do. So when you're aspiring, surround yourself with your equals, because as they're putting in the hours, you realize that you also need to put in the hours. When you're succeeding, surround yourself with people who are more successful than you, because they'll ground you. They'll remind you that you're not where you should be. And when you are failing, mentor others. So when you are failing, surround yourself with those who are below you. So it's a minus. So surround yourself with those who are below you, mentor them, guide them, because in that way, you will also share your lessons, and you'll also open up. And that way, you'll realize that you're not as useless as you thought you are, but you're also able to share your learnings with the others. So that's the Shamrock theory, plus minus equals. So yeah, and then the other things, obsessing about a certain person is an ego. So obsessing about the fact that I'm the CEO, obsessing about titles, that is also ego driven. He says, don't obsess about titles, obsess about the work that needs to be done, right? So instead of saying, I'm the CEO of this, you better recognize, you know who I am. Rather say, you know what, I work for this organization and we have so much work to do. And that tends to humble you, looking at the insurmountable amount of work that needs to be done. You forget about your title and you focus on the job that needs to be done. So I loved that. It talks about control your emotions, meditate, restrain yourself. The ability to control emotions, the ability to have gatekeepers on your tongue also is very important. And when you win, don't develop a big head. Remind yourself that there's work to be done. And I always say this to my entrepreneurs: great stuff. Congratulations on a big deal that you have clinched over the weekend. Go celebrate on Monday morning, get back to work, right? So it's always that: celebrate the wins, but don't develop a big head. Celebrate over the weekend. On Monday morning, get back to work, put in the hours, right? Don't over celebrate. And then he talks about avoid always talking about you. It breeds ego, it breeds arrogance. So always talk about the job, the challenge, and other things, and don't always refer to yourself. And I think often people do these things unaware that they're doing these things. Maintain your sobriety. So be gracious, even when you are winning. Be magnanimous in victory. Oh, this term, magnanimous in victory. So be magnanimous in victory. So even when you are winning, and I see this quite a lot with, if you watch English soccer or very mature sportsmen, when they win, they always give credit to their opponent. And I've seen this, for instance, with Floyd Mayweather. So he talks a big game. I'm gonna beat him. Wada. But after he has beaten you, he talks about he's a good opponent. I felt him. So he gives you that credit, as if you are the one who won, right? So he's trying to sort of be magnanimous in victory. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't say, I told you, I'll beat you up. So he says, be magnanimous in victory, be gracious, right? Be humble in victory. Most successful people are people we have never known, we have never heard of, right? They want it that way because it keeps them sober, right? And I believe that there's quite a lot of successful people that we don't know. And the reason why we don't know about it is because they don't want that success to get to their head. And when we suffer humiliation in public or in private, humble yourself, apologize. Don't allow your ego to make you hard-headed and stubborn. So if you have made a mistake, if you realize that you were wrong on something, and Adam Grant writes quite an amazing book. I forgot the title. He released it recently about the fact that you can change your mind. If you are wrong, come back, apologize. I was wrong. Change your mind. And say I was wrong and I apologize. Don't be stubborn and hard-headed and think that people will respect you for that. And then again, he says, don't seek the spotlight, right? Always avoid the spotlight, because the spotlight has got that, that it's got the ability to inflate your ego, right? Don't seek external validation also, and always love. Hate is ego-driven. I struggled with that at the beginning. Hate is ego-driven. Always love, hate is ego-driven. But the more I meditated on it, and it sort of made sense, right? That when you hate a person, when you hate something, it's about you. It's again focusing on you. When you love, you are then giving that thing the opportunity to understand it. And I think, was it Mother Teresa or somebody who says, when you are busy judging people, you don't have time to love them, right? So it's about you. So always love, hate is ego-driven. So yeah, those are my opening remarks. Great book. I loved it. I color coded this thing throughout. Like I was busy color coding this thing throughout. I loved this book. This is quite an amazing book. I always go back to it. I always read it. One story that stood out for me, I forgot what it was, but it was this army general who they had to do a portrait of him, and he's always been postponing and not wanting to go and do the portrait, right? Because he was this successful general, army general, and he always avoided doing a portrait. And reluctantly so, at the last minute, he was pushed and he went and he did the portrait. He sat there for hours and hours and hours, and the artist was drawing him and drawing him and drawing him. And when the artist was done, the general stood up and left. And the artist was like, "Whoa, don't you want to see the painting?" He says, "No, it's fine. I don't need to see it. I trust that you've done a good job." So for him, it was, I'm not interested in talking about me or seeing myself. It's not about me. But anyway, before I go on and on and on being ego driven, let me hear your thoughts. How did you find the book? Welcome, Enoch, Blondie. Great to see you guys. Lydia, you made it eventually because I see you are struggling to come through. So welcome as well. So yeah, who wants to go first? Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. I love the guy. He's a young chap, did very well, mentored by Robert Greene, one of the most matured entrepreneurs in the US, keeps a low profile, a reader of note. He reads, this guy. I thought I read, this guy reads. So you can follow him on his blog. He's got all this reading list of books. If you want to, or if you want to know about Stoicism, read this book. If you want to know about Marcus Aurelius, he's a great fan of philosophy and all these ancient philosophers. He really loves them. So, and he mentions them in most of his books, Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius, and all these other philosophers. So yeah, who wants to go first, or should I nominate? Mashudu, thank you for volunteering. I knew you'll go first. So your thoughts, you read the book, right? Let's welcome you because you read the book. What are your thoughts? Please switch on your video, sorry. Yes, go for it.
And thanks for this book recommendation. I really loved the book. I enjoyed the book. I didn't read the book, unfortunately. I listened to the book, correction.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes, and this is my first time actually taking time to listen to an audiobook, and I really enjoyed it. Yeah, so ego is definitely the enemy in every season of our lives, whether are you aspiring and trying to achieve your goals, and whether when you succeed and actually achieve those goals, and then during that point in time where you are not succeeding and you're failing, ego has a chance of getting in the way. What I've learned in this book, though, is to take myself out of the equation in every situation, especially in the workplace. Especially, you always want to be right. You always want to be efficient, but are you really being efficient, or are you just trying to brag that you can actually do the job? So I have 5 key lessons. I wrote them down that I really enjoyed, or the ideas that I got from the book. So the first one is, at any given time in life, where we are aspiring for something, all of us, and once we've achieved or when we have achieved success, or we have failed, there's always going to be ego. And that's the first point that I said. We must cultivate humility. And I believe I've been very sensitive to humility lately. And I feel like humility is such an attractive trait. We also need to cultivate diligence. He's not beating up at the bush. We really need to work hard to achieve what we need to achieve. Talk is cheap. How we need to, we've learned, we've been told to fake it till we make it. And then the social media is exacerbating this talk, It's very easy to say I'm an entrepreneur, but there's actually, digitally are not doing anything. Ego is the Enemy is one book that actually creates a bit of self-awareness as to where you can identify where actually is ego taking precedence in your life. So also, one thing that kept on revolving in the book is to maintain your scorecard. And so to maintain your own scorecard, as in what is a success to you, and stick to it. He actually liked using the word, purpose. I would have loved for him to actually just define what purpose is in his own view, what purpose is. I like the fact that he used real life examples. And yeah, so, and then the last one would be to always remain a student, to always know that you don't know. And as you read, I'm aware that as the more you read, the more you realize that you don't know anything at all.
Yeah.
So I really, really enjoyed the book. Yes, ego is the enemy, but I also would have loved him to say something positive about ego. I'm not saying that ego is right, but what I'm saying, he would have just said maybe ego can work for you in a certain fashion. So that's my only critique with the book. So yeah,
Okay.
those
No,
are my
we'll get to the criticisms, but yeah, talk is cheap, and I mean, like, you know, and that's what, when you're aspiring, you talk, and he says talk is cheap. Just go in there and put in the hours. But I think also ego is the enemy, because I mean the full thing is ego is the enemy within, right? That it's the enemy within you. It's not the enemy out there. And we often think that the enemy is out there, and the enemy is, you know, I need to know who the enemy is. But he says that actually this enemy is within you. And you know, you develop a big head, you don't listen to advice, and the next thing, you are your worst enemy. And when you look at where did the enemy come from, actually it came from within you. So yeah, awesome, thank you so much. Yeah, a student for life, I loved that. I actually even have my Twitter handle as a student for life. And I mean, you know, the more you read, the more you realize that you don't know much, you know. That's actually, I found that to be quite powerful, and I agree with that. The more I read, the more I realize that I'm way behind. Yeah, but yeah, humility, you spot on, Mashudu. Humility is not given the credit it deserves. I think there's so much power in humility. I don't think we realize the power that humility has. Yeah, I think we, as usual, we equate humility with weakness, and we always want to talk to be heard, and you know, people can hear how smart we are, and we don't listen. So yeah, thanks for that. But yeah, we'll get to the criticisms of the book later on. But thanks.
All right. No, you're welcome. But my question to you would be, I didn't see him talking about what the difference between ego and also self-confidence. That's something that we can discuss later, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, please note it down. I think it's a
all
good thing. It's a very fine line between the two, but yeah, thanks for that. Awesome. Thank you so much. Who else? Who wants to go? Mr. Ntulani, thank you so much for volunteering yourself. I see you couldn't wait.
Okay, well, I didn't volunteer myself, but anyway, yeah. So I read the vast majority of the book. I think it finishes on 220. I'm on 195. Yeah, you know, this book in surprise, to be honest. I mean, I read his very first book. I was very excited about it. The Obstacle is the Way, and it was at least to me, it felt like a very nothing book. Like it was a book that was where every solution is every obstacle is a solution, and it didn't sound practical. So I definitely wouldn't have read any of his other books had it not been. And let's just say, for me to read this book, it definitely wasn't my idea because of how the first book went. But I was very actually surprised. I didn't see it coming. This book was going to be so good. I think the whole ego thing there. I mean, in line with the debate around what is the difference between self-confidence and ego, I think it has a lot of those type of elements, because socially we have a lot of issues around ego, in a sense that, like, the narrative that you get in social media or in society in general is a lot around, you know, having an ego. So the same way that they'll say work so hard that no one has to, when you walk into a room, you don't have to introduce yourself, for example. But the very funny or the very interesting thing to that is that I remember once Nelson Mandela passed on, I think it was Minnie Dlamini who said that she met him when she was around 12 years old. And, you know, being this big, mighty hero of South Africa, he introduced himself to a 12-year-old. right? And he asked her to introduce himself, or so here's my name. I do this, I do that, I do this. I'm a boy from Eastern Cape. Who are you? And imagine it's that guy who has got this giant of a figure, and he's busy introducing himself to a 12-year-old, no ego whatsoever. And I think that's maybe the best thing to say about ego is that ego is something that's very unintuitive, right? So if you were to be left to your own devices, how we would treat ego is probably not going to be the smartest way, because we're going to say, we've done this, I've studied at this institution, I've got a PhD, what have you done with your life? Whereas, the more unintuitive thing, and the thing that really has to be hard-coded and rewired into your brain, is that, humility is probably going to be the smartest way for you to go. Because whether it be you're burning bridges, you're burning bridges, you're not allowing people to speak. And I think also with society, and even with, elements, when things start with depression, for example, for lack of a better expression, what are we thinking? And perhaps it might also be coming from, typically as Black people, we're generally coming from a very low base. So we have to really be speaking a lot higher of where we are, or at the very least, that's the narrative. Say that you're amazing, say that you're brilliant, say that you're what. And we're not coming from a high base and being a billionaire and then saying, I'm just an analyst, or I'm an overplayed or being self-deprecating or something like that. So, I think that is the biggest lesson for me, how ego is really unintuitive and how it's really something that you really need to learn from someone else, or from someone who's gone through it and understand. Because, even the generals that he was referring to, I think it was a general from the American Civil War who had been fighting promotion throughout his life. He wanted to stay where he was. Like, who would do that? Group. That's what you've been doing. Right? And not to say that that's always the smartest move, but the fact that that can potentially be a good way of thinking at things, it's never on the table. Like, it's never, like, you cannot be self-deprecating. You cannot say no to promotions. You always want to move up. You always want to earn more, get better, or something along those lines. One of the things that I did like, though, was a concept that he mentioned around, planning, or when we plan too much. And he was saying, some of the guys who became very wealthy, like Paul Graham, like Jeff Bezos, like the guys who started YouTube and Google, they didn't set out to change the world. They didn't say, we're going to start this video sharing business that's going to have over 1 billion videos a day, etc., etc. They just had a small thing that they started. And then the issue is that when we are looking at them in hindsight, we think these guys started their startups from looking from step 0 up until step 1,000 when their business was acquired by Google, or when their business went public. And life is not like that. There's a lot of things that go, and maybe this also is the part where it shows the importance of chance. A lot of things where you make a lot of progress. Sometimes, like, you can be a prodigy and one becomes ultra successful and one becomes very mediocre. I'm reading this book, Bad Blood, about Theranos, and they talk about, there's a chapter. There's a chapter where they talk about Sunny. And then one of the things they talk about is the fact that, yes, he managed to become a director in a company that was acquired, right? And he made around 40 million. Marabara, he never thought at any point that was due to chance. After that 40 million, banking, there was that acquisition. The way he was just like, even though, employees could tell, this guy doesn't know much. So it's like that, catering for those elements, it's by chance. I don't know everything. I don't know if I could do this again. Hey, That's big. I don't know if I could do it again. If you gave me another startup and I had to start from scratch, I don't know who will I be able to build it and sell it. Maybe I was being carried. And for that reason, maybe I should put my money in some sort of a fixed deposit. Kilo Didima, like it's an MBA or something. But I mean, it is those type of things. So I think that is like the really big lesson. But I mean, it also made me rethink a lot of things. I was actually, I used to, this is the operative word, have kind of using the affirmations that I would write down. And the affirmations used to be, I am Tulani Makatu, I'm an award-winning entrepreneur. Hey, and then you read this book and then he's like, that's all ego-driven. You know, but it was basically along those lines of the fact that, you know, it's not in line with your purpose. You know, you're just doing it for the wars. You're doing it for people and I'm sure that there are elements of all of those things, but then it's like, what do you put down? But it's also one of those, it's the first thing, you know, you show that those affirmations to 100 people and maybe one person will tell you, oh yeah, I'm fit. You go, how is crazy. But I mean, everyone else will be like, I'm fit to push. But I mean, those are the type of things that it was, yeah, no, ego is not, I simple that thing.
Yeah, I don't know. Thanks for that. I like the chance thing because when you follow the story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos and Sunny, and Sunny behaves as if he's this brilliant coder. Over time, the team members realize this guy can't even code. Like, how did he even become successful, right? But the ego got to him. It got to him so big that he thought everyone else. I mean, there's this thing that, you know, when you enter into a room, he had this belief that he's the smartest than everyone else in the room. But yeah, thanks for that. I mean, that's why for me, it's my favorite book as well. It caught me. I mean, when I saw the title, I mean, this was years ago. When I saw the title, I was like, I need to read this, right? I had not read Ryan Holiday's books before, but when I saw the title, I'm like, this I have to read. And yeah, it dealt with me. I think I read it within a few days. It dealt with me.
But that's that. But the point is just that, it's not like other things. When you, for example, if you've got money, the intuitive thing that you might do is that we don't cruiser, almost say 100 rand or something. But when you become successful, the intuitive thing for you to do is to become arrogant, to become boastful, is to is to always go to that base.
Yeah, worked hard. Yeah.
What have you done? What have you done? When are we seeing you? But you see, whereas this thing is actually telling you your intuitive, what you're drawn to do, it's not the smartest thing to do.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. I'd like to hear your views on, and I think maybe when we have time, we should discuss the difference between self-confidence and ego, being ego-driven. But I like the fact in Tulani that and I mean he brings it over and over that you know, ultimately it's about the work that needs to be done. It's not about the title. It's about, you know, yes, you're a big shot, but in terms of what lies ahead. And I mean, I look at Elon Musk, for instance, and I watch most of his interviews. And most of the time he talks about, guys, we have so many challenges. We need to solve these challenges. And I think if we go about it this way, he's more focused on the work that needs to be done, far more than I've built this thing, I've achieved this. So he's a typical engineer who's more, you know, thinking about problems and the solutions. But thanks for that, great insights. So we'll come back to you before we finish. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing your rating because I know you are not very generous with ratings. So I'm looking forward to your ratings. Veroshka, have you read the book? And then after that, Blondie, you are next. Have you read the book, Veroshka?
I too listened to the audio book. Yeah, yes. Thank you so much for hosting and thank you for allowing me to be part of you guys today. I was actually invited by Mashudu. Hi, Mashudu.
Yes, Mashudu.
Yeah, so the book
The book was really gripping for me. I thought it was going to be one of those self-help books, where we've heard the message before and it's redundant. But I really, really paid attention, especially in the beginning. One of the starting chapters is "Don't tell yourself a story," and that's when I started realizing, as I was listening, that oftentimes when we try and find meaning around the situations that we're going through in life, if we don't pay attention, we can actually tell ourselves a story, like, oh, this is happening to me because what I did, or the reason why maybe I'm not being picked, or why I'm not receiving a promotion is because of this and this, or I'm a previously disadvantaged individual, I'm black, I'm a young black female, all those things that we try and create meaning around. I realized as this chapter was unfolding that don't tell yourself a story, Hore. The creation of meaning itself can be ego driven or ego based if we're not careful. So I really, really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the way he was writing. I enjoyed, as Mashudu said, his frankness, and then he will just lay out a point and then back it up with stories and back it up with real life examples, proven successes and failures of other people. So I really enjoyed that. I'd say for me, it really climaxed at the, I forgot the name of the chapter, but he essentially talking about how when we are about to start projects or create things, we're always in our heads. Like, yeah, like this idea of mine, this invention, when I'm done with it, and like that made me, that really challenged me. He was making a lot of examples as well, using authors. So for me, because I'm in a season where I'm trying to write a book and I want to get it published by the end of the year, I realized that I'm guilty of that thing that he was mentioning, where you're just ideating ideas. I had no idea that that is an ego-based activity. For me, I thought that is me being a dreamer, a creative and innovator. So reading or listening to him explain it and break it down, I was like, wow, this is the enemy for real. Because at the end of the day, what's in my head may not match what I eventually do. And because what is in my head seems so beautiful and wonderful and genius, I may never eventually get to do or apply the effort, which is what ultimately really matters, which is what ultimately is going to produce the result of where I'm trying to go instead of being in my head. So at the end of the book, when I really came out and finished the book, I was really like, it's important for us to get out of our heads, to remove ourselves, and to really, really put in the effort in all the areas, the effort being hard work, the effort being reaching out. And if you're finding yourself at a place where you're failing and you're now retreating into a box and you're afraid, you're like, oh, they're gonna laugh at me, what's gonna happen? Or if you're succeeding, either way, I think it really, really gave me that lesson that it's important to get out of your head, to apply effort, to apply pressure, and then remove yourself. There was he also mentioned something very important about removing yourself from the outcome. If you're applying the effort, do, putting in the work already fulfills you. It already speaks to your purpose. So that at the end of the day, even if you don't get the result or the reaction that you anticipated, you already received the reward in doing the work. And the place of doing the work has nothing to do with outside validation. It has nothing to do with being clapped for or being affirmed. It's actually a place where it's an egoless zone. Doing the work is an egoless zone where you focus on the mission that needs to be accomplished, where you do the research, whether you're writing an academic paper or what. It's just an egoless zone, and you can never get to the place where it's egoless if you're in your head and you're not putting in the effort. So me, that's in the book. And was there anything else? Yes, the story that he mentioned about the general really challenged me as well. The general who avoided promotion all his life. I was like, it's so important for us to know our capacity and to know what we really, really need for ourselves or what we aspire to achieve, because people can really put things on you. They can really project their desires of greatness, of, all their agendas on you. But if you don't allow yourself to get driven by ego and be like, oh yes, put me on that pedestal, make me the thing. I think that's something that challenged me. I really asked myself, or would I do that in that situation? Where would I fall? Would I be the one who's like, oh, give me the promotion, of course? Or would I be like, no, this is my designation. This is what I enjoy doing. This is what I do well, and I'm content here. So yeah, in a summary, I think that's I really enjoyed the book. I enjoyed it. I felt like it was a book in season for me. I couldn't put it down. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's one of those unputable down books, eh?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's gripping. It gripped me, and I love the fact that it detached yourself from the outcome. And I think it's also relating to what Ntulani was talking about, with entrepreneurs coming in and starting their businesses. What I've seen actually with entrepreneurs is or people, not even entrepreneurs, people who want to start a project or do something, and they're always afraid of failure. And there's an element of ego in there to say, if I fail, my ego is going to be shattered. So I'm not going to do it. I'm going to try and postpone it. I'm going to try and wait for the perfect conditions when I'm ready to do this thing, and it won't fail, and my ego will not be bruised. And I love the fact that when you detach yourself from, and what you're saying is, when you detach yourself from the outcome, even if it fails, there are lessons to be learned. So you look at this thing, like, oh, okay, I've learned some lessons, and you move on. And I think the person who actually personifies this very well is Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos will tell you about projects that Amazon has failed at, and he proudly talks about them. He says, you guys, you only see the successes. I have a graveyard full of projects that have failed. And he goes into, and he says, for instance, this Kindle. He says a Kindle is a project that failed, right? They tried it didn't work out, it failed, and they moved on to something else. And he talks about, and for him and they laugh at this thing. It's not ego driven that I failed, I'm going to be shamed, and I'm not going to do this thing. And ever since that, I've tried things. I've also tried to apply this thing. I try projects, they don't work out, I move on. I try something else, it works out. Oh, great. I try something else, it doesn't work out. I move. It's not personal. It's not it's not me. I'm like, okay, it's an experiment. It didn't work out. Experiments don't work out most of the time. It's not the end of the world. But yeah, awesome. Yeah. The promotion thing, I was like, there is just no way, but yeah, it was quite amazing. So thanks, Veroshka. I hope we're not seeing you for the last time, but thanks for coming through. And I battle with audiobooks, audiobooks, and then I love something and I want to write it down. I color my books, I'm right there. Audiobooks, you can't do that. But thanks. You guys are very brave with audiobooks, but thanks a lot. Later on, I would like to hear how you rate the book out of 10. So we'll come back to you. Blondie, you are next. Enoch, and then we finish off with Lydia. Blondie, go for it.
Yes, the first few lines, I knew, this one is going to shatter my ego. It's a book that I've been dying to read. It's a book that my inner child has been yearning for. It's a book that I was supposed to read when I started on my entrepreneurship journey in 2007. It's a book that could have shaped me. I could have been, this is my perception now after reviewing it. I mean, after the first few chapters, like literally pondering where I could have been in life had it not been for me and myself standing in my way. And it was a reflective moment. It was that thing that spoke to that child inside of me and said, remember the bridges that you burned, your ego. So I was doing a lot of ticking. Now I don't want to lie. Now for me, it was a sobering moment. It was one of those harshest things that I've done in my life. It was so painful to read it because it was like reflecting to myself about myself and the things that I don't want to hear about myself, the things that I know that I'm capable of and that are wrong. And this was a corrective moment. So I took it with a pinch of salt, and then I had to take a break after reading it. And then I sat down and I said to myself, this is an opportunity to fix it, and this is, humility. That is the key thing that I picked up from all the stories that were narrated and shared, from, you know, your Angela Merkel being a prime example of such things, to people that have invented things, but, you know, they've never made a big deal out of it. I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio considered his work unfinished art. I mean, he had paintings that you and I would want to, you know, curate now and get buyers for, yes, you know, as in like yesterday, but he considered that unfinished work. So I think failure is, for me, was a sobering moment. I went through those things: aspire, success, and then failure. I went through all three. So for me, it was very much relative. I lived in that moment. I know what it means. And failure humbles you. And now I'm very humble now. You know, if you met me 2 years or 10 years ago, you wouldn't even have a conversation with me, because I was going to put you in your place right now and tell you who I am without even asking.
I met you 5 years ago, and I know what you're talking about.
Exactly. You knew who I was. When I met you, it was that moment, like take it or leave it type of thing. So I think failure brought me on my knees, but in a good way, because I needed to hear it. I needed to see it. I needed to feel it. And sometimes when I write things to say, sometimes the universe delays your progress for a reason, because you need to get out of yourself. When that's one thing, you must get out of your head. Get out of your head. You need to be humble. Life has to bring you to that point where you are so completely humble. You know, you are able to work well with people. And the one thing that I kept on picking up in every, you know, the chapters of the book, the humility part was number one, the finding your purpose and working well with people. Because now I didn't work well with people. I don't want to lie. You know, there are projects that went well, and I'm not going to mention them because they're, you know, I used to consider that as accolades, but then you reflect back and say, but this was unfinished work. I mean, there's still more that I need to do. I mean, why would I even consider myself great looking at one project and then all of a sudden I'm this great person? So for me, it was a moment of just tapping back into my previous life and trying to correct who I am, despite all these 3 steps that I've traveled. I've traveled all the 3 little areas: aspiration, success, and I've seen it. I've touched it. I know what it feels like to have it. I know what it feels like not to have it the next day. And I think for me, I needed to go through that. I'm a different person now. So the reason why I stopped and I had to even digest it in my sleep was because it brought me to where I am now. And for me, it was like, why did I only discover this thing now? Why did someone not? And there are certain parts that I like about the narration of the story, where there's a boy who was an army general who was a friend of a boy that was the dad was deceased. Imagine having that privilege of someone who knows what ambition can do to you. I wanted that so badly in my life, because I had no one like that to say there's a price to pay for every ambition. You hold your high aspirations, but you need to bring yourself down. I needed that, but I'm glad that it's not too late. I'm still here. I haven't really retired. I'm still fighting for every iota of my existence, but it's at the right time. This is the perfect time. And I'm sure the universe wanted me to read it now. Now is it makes more sense, because I've traveled all these paths, and I know. I don't know, but I know what I need. I don't need to do. I know that humility is something that I need to put in the forefront. I'm not crazy about fame. I don't want to be known. I'm more private. I'm not even on social media. I decided to take that approach. The work that I do is just the work that I do, and it ends there. What I do in my personal capacity, it's not important. It's just me and me fulfilling this passion and lifelong purpose and helping others. You know, it stopped being about me. It's about what can I do to contribute to the world, because I only have X amount. You know, I liked it when you made reference to say, you must do something because you're given an amount of time on planet Earth, and it has to be useful. So for me, it was just I need to contribute. It's no longer about money. It's no longer about fame. It's no longer about accolades and awards. It's about, what am I contributing? What am I changing in this world? And yeah, when I leave, I leave. And yeah, I would have done my bit, but nobody has to know about it.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's
Thank
my
you so
story.
much. Yeah. It's an amazing story. And I mean, he mentions Angela Merkel. And I mean, she's one of the most, before she left, she was one of the most powerful leaders in the world, and very humble. I mean, Angie was one of the most humble leaders ever, but very effective. I mean, he brought Germany from this Holocaust image and burden, and he built Germany to be one of the most respected countries in Europe that most of the countries in Europe has respect for, they go to for funding. I remember Greece when it was struggling with the whole crisis, the Eurozone crisis. Germany was one of the most countries that bailed some of the countries out. With the whole Syria, crisis of refugees, while other European countries are closing their doors, Germany is the one that's opening their borders against, even his fellow comrades. He was going against his fellow comrades. So yeah, quite amazing what humility can do when a leader embraces it. And quite interesting, and Ntulani mentioned this earlier on, something that I found quite interesting. I think we have lost Blondie. Oh, there she is. One of the things that I found very interesting, and I don't know, it's an irony. I mean, America is the most biggest ego-driven nation in the world. I mean, it's me, 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 me. And I found it quite interesting that an American writing a book, against ego. I found that to be quite an interesting thing, that an American in America writing a book that ego is the enemy. Maybe it's because he sees it all the time, because Americans are very self-absorbed and self-obsessed. But I think also the other thing I love is the fact that we are more focused about the accolades. I always say this, that, what's the point of having the best constitution in the world? We have the best constitution in the world. We are the biggest this in Africa, what. But we have high inequality levels. We have unemployment. We have all these things. We need to focus on the work that needs to be done, not on the awards and the best of this and the best of that. Focus on the work that needs to be done. I think that will sober most of us. Ramwa Lucy, welcome. Also, the prodigal son.
Thanks, Doc. Don't disclose my issues out there. I'm sorry, my video is acting up. So yeah. Thanks very much. Good evening, colleagues. Yeah, no, this is the book, Dr. Roche. This is the book. I mean, for me, I read when you said we are doing ego this time around. I had to go and read it again because I bought it last year. I had read it, then I've just been reading it again, and it's so, you can't hide away from anything, in terms of, it touches every aspect of your life. It exposes every aspect of your life. You aspire, you find yourself there. You succeeding, you find yourself there. It's like you are closed up in your little corner and somebody's literally showing you, this is where you've missed it. This is what you could have done. This is how you should be conducting yourself and stuff like that. So it's quite a humbling book. You read it and you walk out. And for me, one of the things that, I mean, know me very well. One of the things that I am very guilty of is talking. I mean, I talk. I enjoy, and I've realized that I found that a lot of my projects, which at times have not taken off, it's because, like he said, you talk so much about this thing and in your head, you've already succeeded.
Yes.
And
yes.
you've not put the work, you've not, rolled your sleeves to actually do the work. It's been talk. And then you find you go with a project halfway through, you leave it, or you go to the next one because you've been talking about it so much that it's like you've arrived with that particular project. And that for me has been something now, like nowadays now I'm trying to really be careful to say, what do I talk to people about? What do I say when I'm with people? I like the fact that you could do your things in silence without really talking so much about them. Early this year, I I wanted to support one of my associate who's a brand consultant. And I said, look, I need you to help me to brand myself out there. But it's something that I've paid for this service. And at the time I was paying for it, I was reading the book. And I'm yet to have a session with him to sit down and we go, because I'm thinking, is it really worth it? You know, what do I really need people to know about me and stuff like that? But yeah, the simplicity of the book, the way he communicates and gives examples. I mean, one of the things that I like was about that general who, when he was asked to take the final position, you know, in terms of, you know, just getting and winning the war. And he said, no, Mr. President, it's not my call, it's yours. You know, you are the one who's to decide whether I should go or not. It's got nothing to do with what I want or, you know, and I'm like, wow, this guy, you know, you have the opportunity to be the general. And here you are just saying, no, I'm not interested. So it's quite an interesting book. And, you know, I think the other challenge for me as an entrepreneur is to be able to differentiate your work with your personality, because, you know, you thinking, you know, this success in terms of if this thing fails, if this thing doesn't work out, you know, how are people going to look at me? And, you know, so you find sometimes we break our backs, you know, we can't even sit back and say, you know, how can I, you know, do things better? You are just looking at, I want to get this done because people need to see that I've made it. And also the issue of just, you know, okay, we are in business to make money. That's a fact. But I think for me, the book, you know, just brought it home to say that's not the ultimate thing. But the ultimate thing is, what difference are you making, you know, in the lives of people around you? The money will come when you focus on the important things of what differences can you make in other people's lives, and ultimately the money will come. Because, but when you are humble enough, and I think when one of the things that really for me, I've been watching you, Dr. Roach, having worked with you for quite some time, and I've always admired your humility and said, this guy, in terms of the way he does things, but the impact and the things that he does in people's lives. But after reading this, I understood, you know, and I realized, no, I have a lot to do to come to your level, to be much more humble than where I am. It's no, thank you so much. This is an awesome book. It's an awesome
no, thanks, Mr. Malusi. I mean, you are also equally making amazing things there, you know, and I appreciate the work that you do. But thanks quite a lot. I think, I always struggle with this personal branding thing. I always struggle with this thing to say, but is that really important? Branding. I'm a human being. I'm a person. I've got feelings. I've got emotions. I struggle with certain things. I'm not really a fan of personal brand. I think it's just an American concept, but I think to a large extent it's ego-driven as well. But that's just my personal view. But thanks quite a lot. I mean, I think it challenges. I mean, this book challenges you personally, and Blondie, you know, said it quite well. It really deals with you, and he's got quite a lot of stories to back up what he's talking about. And for me, I took this book very personal. I really took it very personal. And I read it more than once. I've read it a couple of times. And every time it's one of those books, every time I read it, you know, there are books, I mean, they often say when you read a book the second time, it shows how much you have changed. It's the same book, but your life, your experience, your exposure over time has changed. And when you go and you read it again, you sort of, it hits you different. And every time I go back and I read it again, it sort of, it deals with me. So thanks a lot. You must go get your refund. You must go get your
Yeah,
refund.
I should, so I can buy another book at least.
Yes. So thanks for that. Lydia. Yeah, Lydia is the last one. Lydia, go for it.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, this book. I'm just listening to everyone's reflections and I'm thinking, yeah, I had a lot of mixed emotions about this book, I won't lie. I really enjoyed it. However, there were some tensions where I'm like, I agree with some stuff I'm like, having lived them out, I'm like, I'm not sure if I want to live them out again. I think with the main chapters that stood out for me were the talk.
Yes.
That, you know, we're told like, no, you must share your ideas, talk to people. But at the same time, it's true. It does eventually deflate you because everyone pumps you up about your ideas instead of actually pumping you up about doing the work. And personally, I can say like I've fallen into that trap of talking and not actually doing. And the one with about like staying a student and being humble enough to work under people that you know you're better than. Yeah, easier said than done. Easier said and done. Because I used to subscribe to that philosophy of like, yes, you know, pay your dues, you know, your 20s are for learning. It's not about like, but when you're living it out and it actually works out the opposite and you have to actually walk it out, you've made people look better. You've made people look great. And then it backfires on you. They take all the credit. They look great. They look amazing. And you get stabbed and you have to restart life again. And people move on and get accolades of things you've done. It's a different, like, and I'm asking myself, like, okay, if I was more ego driven, would I have benefited instead of actually being the one that's not eating the fruits of my own labor, so to speak? Hence, I'm saying it's like, okay, I agree. Like, yes, humility, like my personhood, my nature is like, yes, be humble. It's about the work. But on the other side, when you're constantly being the one that's doing the work and people just, you know, look amazing off your labor and you're clearing that path. And then when they go on, they forget all about you. It's like, am I really willing to do that again? Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm just being honest. I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that. Like, can I really do that again?
Yeah, and I think Blondie can't wait to answer you. But
I'm just being honest. I was just like,
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, we struggled with that. I mean, what you are raising, I know for a fact you're not the only one who's raising that. I know for a fact that there are other entrepreneurs who are raising the very same issue, that I do the work, someone else takes the credit. What about me? Blah, 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 blah. One of my favorite authors, Seth Godin, deals with this very well. And he says, what is it that you want? Do you want the accolade or do you want the work? Right? What's more important to you, the accolade or the work? If you want the work, you won't care about who takes the accolade, right? So chances are, if you want the accolade, there's a greater chance that if you're going to fight for that, you might not necessarily get the work, right? So, and I think it's purpose. When you spoke about it, it's the purpose.
Yeah.
That then Lucy also comes with what, you know, I mean, Simon Sinek talks about it quite well, about start with why. Why are you doing this? Are you doing it for the accolade or are you doing it for a greater purpose? Right.
True.
So yeah, I also
because my background has been
with that.
I think with that also, that's what I'm saying. A lot of the book I agreed with, but a lot of it was a lot of it challenged me a lot in the sense because my background is media and NGOs, so I care about the work. That was like my focus. That's why I was like, but when you see people sabotage good work, the mission, it hurts more. Like if it was, I feel like if it was just about like the accolades, if it was just about money, I'll be like, oh, okay, whatever, on to the next opportunity. But when you actually see that this influences people's lives, you know, like it's not just about money, it's about, and you, because when you care deeply about the actual work, I feel like when that happens, it hurts more than if it was just about money.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, there's a bit of a challenge for me in that regard, because it's like, yes, be driven by passion, focus on what is important to you, but also you don't always necessarily find your space with people who have the same mindset, who have the same, like the same mission, who have the same purpose of why they're doing what you guys are coming together to do. And like, I just found that sometimes it's like, when it's not just about the money, but it involves people's lives, it involves lives. It hurts more when you see, like, are you seriously willing to sabotage something just to look good? You're willing to sabotage people's lives just to gain something, and you're seeing it, and you're not the person in authority, and you can't do anything about it. It's just like, it cuts at a different level. That's why, like, even the, I forget his name, the one from Greece, the one who like really was supporting this emperor, like stabilizing Greece at the time and everything. And the emperor was literally willing to blow up Greece for his own ego and his own insecurities. And he just kept quiet and dealt with it. I'm not sure if I could have been able to be that humble at that level. Because when it comes to, I'm like, it's one thing attacking me, it's one thing. But when it involves a whole nation, when it involves other people, I'm like, yeah, my ego, I might just let it rise for the greater good. So when is it? No, like seriously, when is it? Because I'm like, I respect them the same way, even with the generals, the ones that were like, okay, I'll let the one, like you choose. But there were lives that were lost. There were lives that were lost. So in there, it's like, is there time where it's not ego, but integrity has to rise up and say, yeah, I can step down, but because of the cost, I need to rise up and actually speak up and stand against whatever, or be the one that actually takes on the role, even though maybe I'm not necessarily the most qualified at this time, but the alternative, the cost might be more. It's just some of my thoughts. Yeah.
Okay,
like
great.
just looking at our country, like we don't even need to go far. Look at our country, like our leadership, like it's
No, thanks, Lydia. I'll give Blondie a chance because I think Blondie might have some thoughts. But you know, the thing with being an eternal student is I mean, and I think Tulane also referred it, or is it Varoshka? That the more you read, the more you realize you don't know much, you know. And I always feel that. I always feel that you know, there's so much to learn. And if you look at, for instance, some of the successful entrepreneurs, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and Elon Musk, you know, I'm just mentioning those that are well known. They read quite a lot, even now. And Musk always encourages reading, you know, and he will tell you he knew nothing about rockets, but he read every book that's available in the library on rockets, you know. So you can never, you know, mentoring comes in different shapes. It comes with having a mentor, it comes with reading books, you know. So you can't always arrive. You always have to constantly put yourself under somebody, because when you read a book, you're putting yourself under somebody, right? And you are in essence saying, I don't know much, let me hear your views, let me hear your thoughts. So, and I think he talks about that in either in the book or some of the blogs that he writes about. To say, when you read, you are basically saying that I am the student, I'm the Karate Kid, and you are Mr. Miyagi. And often, if you place yourself under I'm the Karate Kid, most of the time, you're going to get to a point where you learn so much, you know. But yeah, I like the Shamrock theory that when you succeed, surround yourself with people who are ahead of you, because they're the ones who will tell you that your success is, you know, there's so much work that you still need to do. But thanks for the frankness, Lydia. I really appreciate it. Blondie, and then Mr. Ntulane with the ratings. Blondie, what's your thoughts on Lydia, but also on everyone else comments and, what's your experience rather, not thoughts, what's your experience having listened to Lydia?
I think, it touches on the different areas of our lives. We are at different stages in our lives. And like I said, others could be, at the prime of their success, others dealing with failure. So I think what I could pick up from the colleagues was that it's talking to a certain aspect of their lives, even though it doesn't apply in general. And I mean, I agree with Lydia. There are certain things that, that make me irk when I think about my purpose and someone taking credit for it. But because of the humility aspect, you let that die. And you just watch them walk into the sunset. And this is now my recent experience, a very greedy, this guy's a billionaire. He's a property developer. I'm just, this ordinary girl who's trying. And this guy comes to me. He gives me a project, but he still wants to be in the project. You see what I mean? The humility would say, if it was me 5 years ago, I would have told him to stick it where the sun doesn't shine, because in my mind, he has made it. I am still trying. And why does he need to get access to the same project? I mean, he's giving me work, but actually taking something away from me. But then I had to remember and bring myself. And I think when we had that conversation with that guy, I had recently read the book. So I just, the humility thing kicked in, and I knew, and I said, it's okay. And I left it like that because I've got nothing to lose, and I can't win this battle. It's one of those battles that you can't win. So I think when the colleagues were mentioning the different areas of especially, and this is one of the reasons why I pulled away from social media, and you know about this because I mentioned it to you, but I'm just choosing to be invisible, and I let my companies do the social media things. I just want to be invisible for a reason, because I don't think I'm important. I don't think what I do is serious, and it's something that cannot be accomplished by anyone. I think everyone is capable of what I'm doing, and they can do it probably better than me, but I just don't think it's important for me to be visible. I think let the work do the talking, and without anyone mentioning my name in it. So I took a step back for a reason. And I agree with Lydia. There are certain projects that are personal. And I just feel that, there is a thin line also to this thing, it's self-confidence versus arrogance or whatever. So when you take pride in a project and it feels personal to you, you would want to defend it with all your armor. But then again, you still need to draw that line and say, this is not my battle. You pick your battles, and you look at the long-term consequences of you acting or reciprocating. What does it do for me? Is it a burnt bridge? Will I suffer from the action that I'm going to take? So it allows you to think forward and ponder what is happening. So the guys are looking at it from that thing. And when Tulare said, Tulare, Ntulani, sorry about that. Ntulani mentioned something very important about this thing of affirmation. I used to do it a lot. And I just felt, when I read this thing, I was like, but this is arrogance. You can't be telling yourself you're great and standing in front of the mirror, reciting this thing every day. What is this? And I stopped for a reason, because I just felt, and when this gold medalist in the first part of the book said, this thing is like a wallpaper. And I felt like that when I read it. Those pieces of papers and stick it in my room and make it a wallpaper as a constant reminder of how humble I need to be when I walk out of the door to do what I need to do. So I agree with most of the colleagues. A lot of the things that are happening around are ego-centered. And, you listen to people talk, and you go to these motivational speaking things. Me, I. Even LinkedIn now has become a social platform to brag about your PhD, about your acquisition. When you acquired your PhD, I remember it was so silent, and I heard from a friend, do you know Roche is now a doctor? I'm like, oh, but why is he not telling us? And this was like me, and then now it makes sense. Like, you actually don't take it serious, it would have been out there. You put your degree and you post it on social, but it was so silently done. And this is the humility part that I took away from the whole thing. Or no, man, these are things that we should not be glorifying. What are we doing? How are we impacting people's lives? Let's focus on that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Blondie. I'll come back to you quickly, guys, before we run out of time. And Tulani, what didn't work? I mean, give me a critique, maybe one or two. What didn't work with you? Regarding the book, what are the things that you think could have worked better?
Look, yeah, I really struggled to find something that was problematic for the book. So I actually have subscribed to Ryan Holiday's reading list, right? So I get where he talks about the books that he's written, or the books that he's read, rather, what he thinks of them. He gives a short review. What I do find about him, which is something that I don't like, for lack of a better word, is that he's a very American writer, in a sense that he references a lot of American literature. So his books end up being very American. So throughout the book, you don't see any excerpt about, you know, anything African, or very little anyway, or European. It's very scattered. A lot of it, as you saw, there's a lot of American Civil War, you know, American history, Malcolm X, I mean, the stories are relevant, but I'm pretty sure, you know, ego is so intrinsic that you could find it anywhere else. But that might also just be because the author is so much, he predominantly reads a lot of American stuff. So, and that's not a big deal, but it is one of those things that I would have loved to see something else that was relevant, as opposed to hearing about how it affects the US population or US historical figures. Sorry, the other critique, although it's a bit far-fetched, is just that it would have been amazing if he had given you some sort of a decision tree, because the thing that I struggle to get past is just the decision making in terms of how to deal with it, how to deal with ego, what to do when this happens, what to do when that happens. I mean, aspiring success and failure might not be enough, because it's not always clear to see where, you know, self-confidence starts, or where self-confidence ends, where arrogance begins, or ego. For a rating, I'd read it again, and any book that I'd read again, you know, I think it's worth a high rating. I think I'd give it a 9.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. It deserves a 9. But yeah, you're right. I think, yeah, it's a thing. I mean, the more you read these books, the more you get frustrated with American authors, because they're always one-dimensional, the same stories, you know. Maybe once in a while, Malcolm Gladwell will come up with a story that you have never heard of, and he goes and he digs deeper. He's a historian, so he can afford to go and say, I went to Israel and I read on the story of David and Goliath, and I'm going to write a book on David and Goliath. And he goes and he digs things that we don't know. But not a lot of authors are able to expand their antennas outside of the US. They always you can tell when you're reading an American book, even if they blank out the cover and the author and just say, read what's inside, you can tell the person who wrote this book is an American. But yeah, you're right. Thanks for that. Mashudu, what didn't work for you with the book?
What didn't work for me was that he didn't explicitly delineate between ego and self-confidence. I would have loved for him to do that for me. And he did talk about purpose, and I would have loved to hear his view of what purpose is. So those are the two things that didn't work for me. I love the way he structured the chapters. He was getting straight to the point where the chapters are not too long. I don't know, maybe because I was listening to it, but I felt like the chapters are not too long. And I would agree with Rene that yes, a decision would have been good. And yeah, and then I concur with him that yeah, it's probably a 9 out of 10. I would definitely read that book. I'm definitely buying it now, and I'll definitely read it.
Awesome. Yeah, you have to have this. It's one of those books you have to have. Like, yeah. But thanks for that. 9 is actually, you guys are generous tonight. But I think Ryan has done a very good job. And you are right, in Tulani. I mean, the first book I read, Ryan Holiday, was about marketing. It was something about marketing. I couldn't even finish that book. I was like, no, I can't go on. But it was something about marketing. He was dissing his marketing because he's got a marketing background. And I think he decided to leave the marketing thing because marketers are manipulative. They manipulate people and wada. And it was a rant. But you know what? I tend to be more giving to first books. If Malcolm Gladwell's book, I haven't even read When the Dog Barks or What the Dog Saw, or I'm like, no. But his other books were quite progressive. But yeah, I think this one was a very good book. So thanks for that. 9. Okay, great. Veroshka, your colleague gives it a 9. What do you give it? Just unmute yourself.
I'm saying I feel bad because I give it an 8. I think what didn't work for me was the redundancy. I felt like I was, at some point, I felt like I was hearing the same story throughout the book, although there were different case studies. I really, so in the beginning he started with a certain story, and then towards the end I'm like, okay, I know how the story is going to end. So I really wished he had been more diverse with the type of stories that he told. But it's, as you have said, that American writers pick, the popular stories that we've all heard, and they really highlight the lessons there. So for me, I give it an 8, but I think it's not to take away or to say it wasn't like an amazing book. I'm also going to buy it and add it to my collection. I feel like it's worth having in your library, having a copy in your library, and also highlighting, making notes, and reading it more than once. So for me, I'll say it's an 8.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah, the stories, great stories, but I'm sure there would have been some different variety to it. But thanks a lot. 8 is not bad. I usually give my books 8. 9, it's exceptional. So 8, yeah, 8 is a good score. Thanks for that. Blondie.
I'm not happy about certain things, so I'll give it a 7, because I just feel like, he left out very important things about how to deal with it. Like when the fellow book readers were saying, there are certain things that you must just let us know how to deal with them, because we don't have the privilege of people that can just mentor you at a young age and identify your potential, groom you to become this humble soul that is, no matter where you are at any given point, success or not, just remain humble. We don't have that privilege. We don't come from, some of us don't have that lying around, the privilege of knowing such people. And I just feel that, it's good to know how to deal with it, for our kids. Like I've ordered mine, could take a lot, the book. So I want to have it as part of my library collection for my kids to read it and reread it and understand. Yes, not dwell on certain things that Zakoteng and what was, narrated in those stories, but take very valuable lessons and formulate it around their values and principles when they grow up, because they need that. They need to know about the importance of being humble. I took the hard lessons, so they can't go through life the way I did. I learned the hard way, so they can't do that. They must have it easy. They must know that when we get there, we just remain humble all the way and invisible, because invisibility is power.
Yeah. Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah, in fact, as you're talking, I'm sort of thinking, is there a book on humility though? I mean, if you want book on humility, they're gonna refer you to Dalai Lama and Mother Teresa. Yes, sure, but I would have loved to sort of have a section on what this humility thing is. It's one of those things that you can't really touch it, but you know it when you see it, type of a thing. You can't, it's one of those elusive topics, I find, but it's quite an important topic, to your point. But
I've got a book, sorry, Roshan, I've got a book that, Dalai Lama, that I'm going to share with everyone that I've read around selflessness, and it touches on humility and the importance of doing that. So I will share the title, and then let's see if we can, I've read the book, and it's one of the most humbling books, because it was written from someone who's like, I think who's well placed in this universe and understands it. Yes, there's certain parts that you will not agree with. You're a Christian and you just be like, why is this person saying this? But he's talking to everyone in general. So there's a lot of my friends who don't like Dalai Lama because of what he says of Christianity. But I think you need to be open-minded to take those things and apply it. Whatever doesn't apply to you, you remove it. And you stick with those certain principles about selflessness, the humility part.
Okay, awesome. So we are going to edit, and you're going to facilitate that session later on. So thanks for that, Blondie. Ray Enoch, your thoughts on what didn't work on the book and your rating?
Doc, this book worked for me. I mean, I'm good with this guy. I'll give it a 9. I'm good with this guy. Maybe after reading it for the 3rd time, I'll find something different. But for now, I'm good. Ryan did a good job.
Yeah, no, if there's nothing to critique, you know what, let's not look for things to critique. But it's a good, It's a good book. No, absolutely. Thanks. 9, a great score. Thanks a lot, Lucy. Lydia?
Yeah, I think for me, the guys have already said it, but the main thing was he didn't share how to deal with it. And I think some things that I struggled with personally was not everything is ego. Sometimes it's confidence. And sometimes I felt like in certain cases, people needed to actually step up in confidence as opposed to just backing down, thinking it's ego. So I think just clarity between ego, confidence, and actually standing up when you need to. Like, so I'll give it an 8.
An 8. Oh, no. Oh, I was expecting worse. Okay, 8 is not bad.
No.
Okay.
I mean, I like this. I like the short chapters, straight to the point. She was not just, running around the same mountain, and they were short,
Yeah.
precise, and well structured. And I just like that, and very applicable. Like, yeah, so an 8.
Awesome. Awesome. I would give it a 9. Also, I'm very generous. This book also, to Remolus's point, it really dealt with me. It really, really dealt with me. I've always known the principles, but I was reading a book like this for the first time that really dealt with me. And especially to Lani's point, I read this marketing, what. I was like, but when I saw this one, it really dealt with me. So I gave it a 9. Yes, the stories are American. I love history, so I can forgive him because they are mostly, historical stories. But yeah, thank you so much. We are 2 minutes over time. I apologize for that. The next book we are reading is Dare to Lead by Rene Brown. I think it's the last Thursday, I'll just confirm the dates on the emails. If you don't mind, Veroshka, if you still want to come back for Dare to Lead, can you please just type your email on the chat, and then I'll include you in the mailing list. So please, colleagues, get the book. I need someone to volunteer to facilitate that session. I think I've done enough facilitating. So if there's anyone who's brave enough to say, okay, I'll facilitate that one, please raise your hand. I'm willing to hand over the baton. But thank you so much, and apologies for the 2 minutes over time. And I really enjoyed the session. And thank you for the contribution, and all the best.
Thanks, Doc.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Yes.
everyone.